All right, Ted Johnson, it's just been not a good technical day
Nope.
for us.
Nope.
First, you had a problem with the Zoom in that it needs to be updated. I tweeted this out to people. This is my public service announcement. Don't have this happen to you at 9 a.m. tomorrow when you try to join your first meeting. You need to update the program. You need to update the whole thing. You need to get it out there, get it all updated. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to use it. And then secondly, what was your piece of advice about knowing the computer?
Yeah, well, just here's the thing. We have passwords for so many different things, and particularly when it comes to your computer, your desktop. I have a nice desktop. If you don't know what the password is to get into your computer to update your app, it can create a very frustrating scenario, which I found myself in. It doesn't underneath. There's usually forgot password ? And you can click on that and you can just send it a link, to fix it to your email. That doesn't have that feature on my Mac desktop. So I was not able to, and I don't remember my password. So I am not able to update my Zoom on my desktop. So we're going to the phone. So it's not the best quality. So I apologize. Yada, 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 yada.
And then I thought we were all good. And we started the show like 15 minutes ago. And then my brother Ted texted me to say, oh, you're not on the YouTube channel. And then I realized that I made the same mistake that Joe Murray made a couple times. And I launched our show onto the Marshall Hook channel, which it exists, obviously, but it's not supposed to. There's nothing there except a handful of shows that were accidentally launched onto the wrong YouTube channel. So that's the only thing that exists there.
Millions and millions of subscribers to that channel, I'm sure.
Oh, it's chock full of stuff. And then I had my own password problems trying to sign out of the Gmail account that links to that YouTube channel. They get signed into the Gmail account that links to this YouTube channel. And we're doing all of this while our guest co-host of the week is sitting in darkened silence in the background, probably thinking, this is the operation I signed on to. This is the thing that I agreed to do.
Hang in there, Patrick. I'm looking forward to getting to Patrick, because I have a lot of questions about what he's familiar with and what some of the stuff he's gonna be able to share with us, because we all have, a lot of us have young kids, and so I'm curious to get his thoughts on what the future of our kids' sports is going to be. So,
well, you know what? Let's go ahead and just bring them right on board then and get to know our friend Patrick Mahoney, who was one of a handful of people who sent emails after I tweeted out that we were basically opening ourselves up to some guest hosts. A fella named Levon, whose last name I don't recall, so we're just going with Levon, joined Joe Murray and Mike Riley yesterday and seemed to have a good time with it. They had a good time with him. I listened in. It went well. Patrick Mahoney is the big winner of today's prize, in which he's now managed to sit around for a good 45 minutes waiting for Ted and for me to figure out all of our technical issues. A seventh grade teacher, so you probably have been Zooming, I don't know, every day for like 2 months at this point. Patrick, welcome.
What's up, Patrick?
Thank you, gentlemen. Just watching the magic happen behind the scenes for the last 45 minutes with a Channel 7, a Patriots legend. So honored to be here. Thank you, guys. It's going to be fun.
So let me ask you, let me start with this, because I don't have to Zoom in my work. Ted doesn't have to Zoom in his day-to-day life. Are you zoomed out? Are you tired of the Zoom? And is this really what you want to be doing on a Sunday, when I think you're going to have to dive right back into Zooming again tomorrow?
Well, it's a different audience. I'm a Zoom master when it comes to entertaining 12-year-olds, for 30 to 45 minutes at a time. So it'll be nice to have some adult Zoom conversation, a little bit of a change.
Hey Patrick, go ahead, Mark.
No, go ahead, Ted.
Well, I just say, because my kids, I have two kids, and they're a freshman and sophomore in the Wayland and public schools, and they're a little bit fatigued out. And so, has it been a struggle for you? I mean, are you sensing that from when you do teach online Zoom classes to your students? I mean, is the engagement level, is it still pretty high? I mean, are you sensing that the kids are are still fully engaged in kind of how you're doing it? Do you have to get creative? I mean, how's it just been for you trying to keep the attention of these young kids when you are teaching? And I don't know how many days a week you're doing it, but it's got to be kind of the redundancy set in. How's it been from a challenging standpoint from that standpoint?
I mean, it's been really different. I've had to really reinvent myself as a teacher. I've been teaching for 17 years, in front of a group of kids in front of a live audience. And so, I've had to try to think of, new ways to engage and new ways to teach the kids, from 15 miles apart between me and them. So it's been different for sure. And it's really challenged me as a teacher to reinvent myself. So, at the end of the day, if you get to the core value of it, it's still the same. My job is to engage them and to try to entertain them, whether it's a live audience or via Zoom, because, my mantra's always been as a teacher, if they're engaged and they're entertained, then they're paying attention to what I'm talking about and maybe they'll learn something. So it's definitely been an adjustment on the fly.
So it is important to note that despite the fact that Patrick is a 7th grade teacher at the same school that my 7th grade son goes to, this is coincidence more than anything. I did ask my son to vet Patrick. I'm like, this Mr. Mahoney guy. And probably the most speaking he's done to me all week, his response was, I don't know. So I don't think Patrick knows my son. My son doesn't know Patrick. So this, again, mere coincidence more than anything. Patrick, I've got my own brother, who is our biggest fan, wanting to know a little info about what we have on the wall behind you, starting with who's pitching up there over your one shoulder? Who's that on the mound?
So we've got Pedro up in one corner, vintage 1999, 2000 Pedro. We've got the snowball field goal kick.
Yep. I was there for that game.
That Ted knows
classic.
Really well. So I was a senior in college for that one in the middle of a snowstorm in Worcester, while Ted's on the sidelines of Foxborough and on the field in Foxborough witnessing this firsthand. Yep. And over here, claim to fame from an ex girlfriend that I somehow have commandeered this is a bar mirror from the 1984 Celtics World Championship with Heinsohn, Casey Jones, Red Auerbach, and JoJo White. So
very cool.
Trying to represent, Boston sports here in my debut.
I'm going to tell you a secret about the snowball that I don't think I've ever shared anywhere. I happened to be in Atlanta for that playoff game. And so I was down in a basement watching on a big screen TV. I fell asleep. I missed all of the drama of the game. I'm like, I'm into this game, but I'm sitting in this huge sectional couch in a dark basement with the show, up on a big screen TV, and I was lying backwards, and the next thing I know, I'm like, we're in post game. So I missed all of the drama of the snowball. I hear it was a good game. I hear that there was a lot of drama in that game. Yeah. Ted, you could probably speak to that more than most. But for me, it was I didn't have to deal with any of the angst of the fumble. Or whatever you want to call that.
It was not a fumble. It was his arm was going forward. It was a forward pass, as we all know.
Yes, as we all know. Did you know it in the moment, though, Ted Johnson?
In the moment, I mean, that was an amazing kind of, obviously. It took 10, 15 minutes for them to decide what that call. I mean, when the ball came out, it was Charles Woodson on a backside blitz. He hits Tom Brady. Ball comes out. My good friend, one of my closest friends that I played linebacker with at the University of Colorado, Greg Beaker, was the middle linebacker for the Oakland Raiders. He recovered the football, and I thought it was a fumble, guys. I really did. And I had never heard those two words uttered in the same sentence before. Tuck rule. I'd never heard of that until they said it on the field. And obviously, that gave us new life. The Raiders still could have stopped us. They didn't. Adam Vinatieri. Still, a good chance of him missing those field goals. He does not. But a lot of people think that was a pivotal point and obviously the beginning of what was now, obviously probably the best dynasty ever put together. So that was an incredible game to be a part of for sure.
And I can tell you it was a very comfortable couch on which I slumbered
Obviously.
through most of all of that. So it's one of my dirty little sports secrets is I was right in. I could present it differently. I could tell you that I was sitting right there watching it, or sitting right in front of the TV during the snowball for the entire time. And that's true. I was 100% in front of the TV. I was just sound asleep for a good chunk of it.
But let's face it. I mean, it was obviously, it was one of those calls that could have gone either way. It could have gone either way. And so it takes a little bit of luck, I think, to compete for the Super Bowl 9 times out of the last 20 years and to win 6. There is some luck that goes along, is part of it. And let's face it, we got a lucky break right there, or else things could have been very, very different.
Well, as long as we're talking about the Patriots, I find it interesting that you both sent me notes on what you wanted to talk about, and you both mentioned the same thing, which was one Rob Ninkovich talking about who may or may not be the starting quarterback for week 1 of the Patriot season. And I'll say this. Let's cut to the chase. He thinks it's going to be Brian Hoyer. And I have said time and again that I don't necessarily believe in Jarrett Stidham. I don't have any number. I don't have any piece of film. I don't have anything other than my decidedly unscientific gut that just says, I just don't feel like Jarrett Stidham's the thing. The only scenario where I wanted to see Jarrett Stidham's start was one where my only other choice is Brian Hoyer. So what is the concept where Brian Hoyer is your starter in week 1? What is the point of that? Given that you've decided you don't want to sign any of the free agents, you didn't want to draft anyone, is Brian Hoyer really our best choice to be the quarterback of this team post Tom Brady?
You want to let our guest host answer first? Or
sure,
Patrick,
go ahead, Patrick.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I mean, it really stood out, because of who was delivering that message this week. When Rob Ninkovich, obviously former Patriot, probably still plugged into a degree, when he comes out and says, that the starting quarterback week 1 is going to be Brian Hoyer, I think we all perked up. I perked up. It seems like Teddy's ears perked up, because that obviously carries some weight. I mean, I keep going back to the report that came out earlier that, when we signed Hoyer, Bill, it was rumored that Bill said Hoyer's going to get a chance to compete for the starting job. And, kind of the myth with Bill seems to be, that, he's going to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. But Teddy, as you said, kind of over and over again, Bill has his guys.
Yep.
So is Hoyer one of those guys? Is it a wink, wink, nudge, nudge? You come back here, Brian, and, you'll get a chance to start, and you probably will start because, we feel X, Y, and Z about Hoyer. We know he's not ready. We don't know enough about him. I'd rather go with a veteran presence, and, here we are, with Rob saying that Hoyer could be the starter week 1.
I think what we got is a very unique situation, you guys, Patrick and Marshall. I think because of what's going on with coronavirus, condensed off season, how these guys are doing virtual workouts. I think they're finally going to be getting into the facilities, I think soon, in the next week or 2. At least the coaches are, but they are way behind on preparation, obviously way behind on being able to kind of, with not having OTAs, not being able to, go out there and run team activities. It really puts Jarrett Stidham behind the 8 ball. Even though he's been in the system for 1 year, Brian Hoyer's been in the system for in the past before, so he's very familiar with it. The one thing I think that favors Brian Hoyer is the fact that he's been around a lot longer. And so that might benefit him and give him the inside track into starting. But if you start him and, are you gonna, Bill, has Bill ever pulled a guy? I mean, he's had Tom Brady as his quarterback for, 19 of the 20 years that Tom was here. I feel like he's going to love the one with whoever he starts, unless it just, Brian Hoyer can navigate the offense. He's a competent quarterback. Is he going to make plays to win you the game? Probably not, but I think he's a guy that he can also maybe not lose the game for you either. And maybe that's what Bill wants, is a guy that just is efficient, that knows the offense, that won't screw it up. And it's not sexy, and that might be Brian Hoyer. I'm pulling for Jarrett Stidham. I know you, Marshall, you said earlier that you just don't think he's the guy. We don't really know. We don't really know what this guy can do. And then in the limited time that he had in preseason, what I saw that jumped out more about anything about Jarrett Stidham last year in preseason was he looked poised. He looked competent. He didn't look like he was, peeing down his leg. And I thought that was impressive. When you're backing up the greatest quarterback of all time and you're playing for the greatest coach of all time, and an organization like the New England Patriots, it's a daunting task. And so he looked the part. And so I was just impressed with how he played in the preseason. Now, it's preseason, I get that, but still, he's a rookie, and he did some things that I thought was impressive. However, having said that, I just think with a condensed offseason, you guys, my feeling is the safe bet is to maybe go with Brian Hoyer. But that doesn't excite me. I'm just, as a fan, I would rather see Jarrett Stidham, because we know what Brian Hoyer is, and I think it's just more exciting, to watch a guy develop and see what his ceiling can be, than it is to go with a guy that we kind of know what his limitations are with Brian Hoyer. So
I don't think we kind of know what the limitations are with Brian Hoyer. I think we know all of the limitations. Yeah. We saw it here in New England. We saw it with the Texans. There is no mystery left to Brian Hoyer anymore,
right?
Which, you said it, we don't know what Jarrett Stidham is. And so this is the one scenario where my only other choice is Brian Hoyer, that I want Jarrett Stidham in there. I don't believe he's the guy, but we don't know. We know what Brian Hoyer is. And so, for instance, I'm a big, bring Cam Newton in here, and people say, well, he's been hurt and you've seen what he is, but we don't know what a theoretically healthy Cam Newton is under Bill Belichick's system, right? Or what he could be, work or not. Like, that to me is more interesting. An established talent, somebody who is a league MVP, I would be on board with him over Stidham. But Brian Hoyer, like there is, when they decided last year to cut Brian Hoyer and keep Jarrett Stidham, I was 100% on board with that for the very same reason that I'm talking about this. Like, we know that Tom Brady is old a year ago. We know that at some point Tom Brady's going to leave. We don't know what the future for the New England Patriots is at quarterback, but what we do know is it's not Brian Hoyer. Brian Hoyer is not the future for this team. We knew that last year. And so when they did cut him last year, I was all on board with that, because I said, all right, well, at least this kid that you drafted, he's an unknown. Maybe he's the future. I don't think so, but maybe he is. We know that Brian Hoyer isn't. 1 year later, we're back to Brian Hoyer versus Jarrett Stidham, and I'll make the exact same point. Maybe Jarrett Stidham is the future. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think we can all agree it's not Brian Hoyer.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Let me ask you guys this question. What are your expectations out of this year? Do you want this team, and do you expect this team to compete for, a championship this year? So do you want to win as many games as possible so that you can compete for a Super Bowl? Or do you want to see a season in which a young guy shows flashes and shows potential of maybe being the long-term answer? And so to me, I would rather lose a game or two, but see a long-term potential in Jarrett Stidham than go with Brian Hoyer, who's maybe, quote unquote, the safe bet, where deep down, guys, has no chance of getting you all the way. To me, I would rather have a season that maybe you made it to the playoffs, maybe, and you get bounced in the first round, but that you saw a lot of growth in, kind of a young kid potentially showing flashes that he can maybe be the answer. I would rather do that, go with Stidham, than go with Brian Hoyer, who maybe be the safe bet, but no, ultimately you're not going to get, far down the road with him as your quarterback.
Yeah, Ted, I agree. I'd rather have, as a fan, throw Stidham in there, go through the growing pains, see him mature, see him develop, see him get experience. And sure, if the Patriots end up, 8-8 instead of, 10-6, I would definitely take that.
Yep.
I mean, that experience is invaluable. It'd be sexier as well. Throwing the kid in there and watching it, and us going through it all together and watching him make mistakes, but then seeing him mature. And who knows, by the time we get to weeks 12, 13, 14, and it's December, maybe we'll see at that time. We really got to know like what the kid has. And there's really only one way to do that. And I think that's throw him in there and, let's see what happens.
I mean, I don't think that this team is a championship contender, regardless of which of these two guys you put in there. So with that said, I'm just going to reiterate the same thing that they're not with Brian Hoyer. Brian Hoyer has never been a starting quarterback for a contending team. He just hasn't, and he's not going to be. We know what his ceiling is. I don't think that Stidham's that guy either, but you get to learn. And so would I like them to see them win as many games as possible? Sure. But I don't think they're a championship contender, regardless of these two people. And so, I've said it about the Red Sox in terms of, trading away Mookie Betts. And in the past, it was more about when I wanted them to move on from David Ortiz. That was about, listen, it's time to start looking toward the future. And if you're not part of that future, then you don't do anything for me on a non-contending team. Like, obviously veterans are great if you're a team that's contending for a championship, but when you're not, then I don't need a 40 whatever year old guy in there. And so to me, either you're contending for a championship or you're building for the future. Those are your two choices. Just treading water with Brian Hoyer does nothing for me.
Okay. All right. So what you're saying though, Marshall, is to me, I would think you would rather have Stidham out there. If you're building for the future, Stidham's more of the future than Brian Hoyer.
100%. Give me Stidham.
Yeah, so this team could be competing for a championship this year if they still had Tom Brady on this roster. But Bill decided he didn't, Bill decided he didn't want to pay Tom what he was asking for, so Tom's gone on. So now our expectations are lower. So nobody expects this team with Brian Hoyer or Jared Stidham to compete for a championship. So why not build for the future and put Stidham out there as opposed to Brian Hoyer? And I also think, and I think I heard Felger say this earlier, you guys, this week, that it's probably a good point. Here's the thing. Ninkovich, my feeling is a lot of former players aren't like pounding the phones, like calling guys on their old team, trying to find out information. I mean, you might hear something here or there, but my feeling is that there's something here at play with Bill trying to keep Stidham kind of grounded. You put out there, you get a guy like Ninkovich some information that they're leaning more towards Hoyer. Nick puts it out there. It puts pressure on Jared Stidham to make, so that he knows he's not going to be given that, given the job. There's psychological games being played through the media as well. So I thought Felger brought that up earlier in the week, and that might be true. Just sending Ninkovich in a way by saying Hoyer's going to be the starter, sends Jared Stidham a message like, hey, man, you haven't arrived. You're going to have to work for it, yada, yada, yada. So don't put it past Bill doing something like that as well.
Wait, are you suggesting Bill Belichick might be playing mental games with players?
I am absolutely suggesting that. Hard to believe, right?
I mean,
hard to believe.
It's not like you have firsthand knowledge of that or anything, right, Ted?
Dude, I got more institutional knowledge about what goes on, how the main key players in this whole thing work and think. And so I know how Bill thinks. So yes, it's pretty safe bet the Bill's using. He uses the media to his advantage to get messages out. That's what he's always done.
And I feel like we saw this a little bit last year in the competition for the backup. I think that Belichick more than once, talked about, Brian Hoyer in kind of glowing terms, basically saying, listen, I know that we drafted this kid, but that doesn't guarantee him anything. So in a lot of ways, I think we're seeing a duplication of Hoyer versus Stidham this year that we saw last year. Only this year it's for the starting job. Last year it was for the backup game.
Yeah. You know what I like to see? I'm a big fan of the quote unquote, if this is where you're going to be, you don't have a star quarterback, the quarterback competition. So let's see how it goes, man. I mean, look, we haven't had a quarterback competition around here in 2 decades. So, more than that, 3 decades with Bledsoe going back. I think it's going to be kind of exciting just to see a quarterback competition. Guys in training camp these guys are going to rotate probably with the ones, and they're going to change up who gets, the majority of reps with the ones one day versus the next guy the next day. They're going to probably split up the reps in preseason if there is, hopefully there is a preseason. And so you're going to see a true quarterback competition played out in front of it, and then let the best man win. It just, you don't see that. You haven't seen that around here for almost 3 decades. And I kind of like that it's that scenario is going to be at play right here.
So the question in the comments section, is there any value for the Patriots in winning the AFC East? Or are we now, as a New England fandom, you're either a Super Bowl contender or you're a rebuilder? Whereas in other markets, and my answer to that would be probably not. In other markets, if you're, Cincinnati, then yeah, there's probably a lot of value in winning a division and qualifying, to play wild card weekend and know that you're not really a contender for a title, but you're in the playoffs, which is the point that I've been actually making for years. Like, I do think that as a fandom, we're wildly spoiled at this point, that it's either you are a, lock-in contender for a championship or you suck. I mean, that's basically what we heard from a lot of Patriots fans last year once the season kind of turned and they struggled down the stretch, that this team sucks. I'm like, well, they qualified for the postseason. They were one bad Miami drive away from getting a first round bye. In any other city in the country, and I really think any other city in the country, even, Kansas City, which has been a winner of late, that is considered a successful season. You made the playoffs. You won your division. You had a good record. Here, I don't think that's good enough. And particularly in the first season after Brady, no, I don't think people are going to get really excited about winning the AFC East, particularly when I think Tom Brady's Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be much better than that.
Well, I'm curious what Patrick thinks about this, because we're supposed to be unbiased media members, right? You and me, Marshall, and Patrick's the true Patriots fan. I mean, Patrick, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on. I mean, is it you're so spoiled, we've had so much winning, is a division title and getting bounced in the first round, is that going to get you excited, or are you so kind of desensitized to losing that you just expect championship every single year? Like, from your perspective, what do you think about that?
I think, we all know that, Bill's not going to tank the season. It's just not going to happen. It's not in his DNA. So yeah, as a fan, we have to, kind of temper our expectations and reset our compass as a fan, in terms of expecting AFC championships and Super Bowls. But yeah, I'd be excited, by a Jared Stidham led team, going into week 16, week 17, beating the Bills or Jets or whoever, and winning the AFC East and getting a home playoff game. That's so much more exciting than, what's the worst is this team is going to be, 7-9, 6-10 if things go really wrong. So I'd much rather, have a 10-6, be fighting for the AFC East championship. That would be an exciting, last couple of weeks of the season. That'd be an exciting December.
You know what too, you guys, and Patrick makes a good point. I think he's absolutely right. I think most people will get excited about that because particularly like the aesthetics of it. How does it look? Does it look like the team was getting better as the season went on? Did you show flashes that maybe down the road in a year or two that this team can maybe compete for championships? I think it's just kind of how it looks winning the division. And you're right. I mean, look, this fan base we've had it good for so long. It's almost like a reset, kind of recalibrates expectations, and people will get hungry again about the future if this team is competing for even at least a division title with an unproven quarterback in Jared Stidham. I think more people will get excited about winning a division with an unproven quarterback like Jared Stidham than they would a Brian Hoyer, because you kind of know, again, what your limitations are. But if you do it with Jared Stidham, it's like, okay, it's a building block towards the future. And that gets people excited, is kind of just seeing something develop and, positively trend upwards, particularly with the quarterback position on this team. So I think you're right. I think if people have no problem with if this team's, winning the division, but maybe not getting further, if they're doing it with a guy like Jared Stidham, who potentially has a chance to be, a franchise quarterback for this team.
I also think that Bill Belichick factors into this in a couple different ways. because
Big
we
time.
are always faced with was the winning more about Belichick or Brady, which I have said time and again, I think is a ridiculous question because it's both of them. And you can't separate the two of them.
Right.
I
It is both
don't
of
think
them.
it's possible to separate the two of them and say it was one of them more than the other. It was a perfect marriage, and that marriage of those two guys led to all the winning. But that said, I don't know that Bill Belichick thinks that way. And he may want to do his own job of proving that, no, I can win without Tom Brady. I'm sure he wants to show that he can do that.
Marshall,
And
he's
as our
obsessing
commenter,
about it.
yeah, what's
He's
that?
obsessing. He's obsessing about it. He wants. That's the beauty of this year. I didn't mean to interrupt. He wants to win with Jared Stidham as a quarterback so bad. You're gonna see him coaching his ass off more than anything because he wants to prove he is. That's just how he is, man. He wants to prove he can win without Tom Brady. So you're gonna see the absolute best out of Bill Belichick this year because of that. So to think that he's going to tank or he's going to mail it in, these people that call in and say, hey, get a better, get a high draft pick for next year is BS. Belichick wants to win and is more motivated to win now than he's ever been because now that Tom's gone. Don't kid
And as the commenter points out, he's got that win record he's going for too. And I don't think he's going to punt away a season in an effort to, like, he's not going to give away 5 or 6 wins in an effort to get a quarterback. Not when he's trying to chase down Don Shula, which for all of the winning that he's done is still not close. He still needs another 5, 6, 7 year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's a good number of years with like 10 wins to get to Don Shula's regular season win total. And for all the Patriots fans who go, oh, he's got more play, that's not the record that matters. The record is regular season, and he is well behind Don Shula right now for regular season. So I don't think at this point that he's going to be punting away any seasons as long as he wants that record. And he wants that record. Clearly, he and Don Shula were not buddies.
I wish you'd just say it. Just say it, Bill. Just go on record and say it. That's something he hasn't said it, so we always just assume that's what he wants, and we assume right. I know the man. He is obsessed with he wants to put that record behind him, and he wants to beat Don Shula because that's just how he's wired. And so that's a huge motivation for him for sure.
So turning the page from football for a bit here, every week I feel like Ted and you and I would have an update on the which sport is going to be back first question. And I think when we were last on, 2 weeks ago, we were like, hockey's not even coming back at all. There's no way they're going to make it back. And now we find out that no, actually, it seems like hockey of all of the sports has got the most concrete plan. I mean, they're not ready to hit go on it, but they're like, we know what teams or how the team playoff format. We know that we're not going to bother with the regular season. We're going to go right to the playoffs. We know the format that we're going to do that. We have plans on where that's going to happen. So in the last 2 weeks, I don't think any sport has made the progress that hockey has. And NFL, obviously, they're not in action right now, and they have at no point decided that, they've been talking like they're not even going to be delayed. So they don't really factor into this conversation. The NBA is getting closer. They've even put a date on it when they want to get back to work. And then we've got Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball, the one that should be the easiest to do at some level. It's the middle of their season, or, the middle of the time of the year when it would be the middle of their season. They've got the most social distance between them now, and these two sides are engaged in a fight over money. There is now an entire theory out there that, and maybe this is conspiracy theory, maybe there's validity to it, that this is all a big fat plan on a ploy on the behalf of the owners to basically break the Players Association in baseball. That they're not really interested in having a season. They're more interested in breaking the union ahead of a contract, a collective bargaining agreement renegotiation that's a year or two away. I can tell you that neither side are doing themselves any favor in the baseball front at this point. It is just a big, ugly mess for Major League Baseball at this point.
Can I jump in here, Marshall?
Yes, please do.
I've been fired up about this one all week. So I'm a teacher. I'm a union guy. And all the other player unions, football, basketball, hockey, on their side, teachers union, players union. No, but of course, the baseball union's a different animal. They seem like, they go out of their way time and time again, as exemplified by, Blake Snell's rant a couple of weeks ago, just him going off, I got to get mine, sounding like he has the IQ of a rock, just players union just as always in baseball is, just continuously rubs you the wrong way. So I was actually on the side of the baseball owners until I saw their financial proposal this week. So maybe it's that conspiracy theory, Marshall. Maybe, it's just the first step in, a negotiation, but their plan to the players was just unbelievably insulting. And as annoyed I was by Blake Snell and the players union, I immediately flipped to defending the players union, when I saw, what the offer was to the players. Just if you're a $25 million player, you're going to make $6 million. If you're a $10 million player, you're going to make under 3. It was just when I saw that, kind of spreadsheet of what the numbers were, I immediately was like, the players can't accept this. Like, this is insulting on so many levels where, we're expecting, and again, it's, it's a pandemic, all common rules are out the window. But when you're expecting Major League Baseball players to play for 30% of their salary, 25% of their salary, I really don't blame them to be mad. When we saw, statements from people like Scherzer this week coming out saying that this is unacceptable. And, I went in a week, from loathing Blake Snell and the rest of the players union to being on their side after that owner proposal.
I can't. I hope that they just screw it up, you guys. I want to see this game just get a complete recalibration. I want it to be blown up. My feeling is the owners see an opportunity here with the coronavirus to kind of, create a scenario in which the players are kind of making themselves look bad, right? Now, I hear what you're saying, Patrick. That offer was definitely a slap in the face to get maybe, but it was also an offer to try and divide the union and, between the haves and the have-nots. And so, maybe that was part of their ploy. I don't mind a little bit of that. It's so funny. Like, baseball has just gotten out of control with the arrogance from the players to think that their game is trending upward and it's not their problem and they don't care about the fans. I'm so tired of them. They have to just at some point realize that they are the problem, and it's their tonality and how they behave and how they deliver their messages that are just turning people off. And so I don't mind something like this just blowing the whole thing up, that everybody just getting so upset with the players, the owners, that people just lose interest in the sport altogether. I wouldn't mind that, because the game needs a recalibration, big time. And I thought maybe I was kind of backing whatever commissioner of the league, as far as leagues getting back to playing. I just thought the best commissioner was going to be kind of the guy that was going to get it all together. So I just thought Adam Silver is the best commissioner, I think, all of sports, would get basketball back first. And it still might. I think it still has a chance to maybe beat hockey being back. But when you think about it, the sports that's going to get back first are the sports that have the players that are, I think, the most kind of, the smartest players and the players that have long-term kind of picture in mind. And that's always, to me, that's hockey and football. There's a partnership with the owners. And so I wouldn't be surprised if hockey gets back because of how amenable the players are with what's going on in football as well. But to me, baseball, they're both sides are making it so, difficult to really like the sport. And I don't mind that, because it needs a slap in the face, and they need to know that people are just tired of it. And so I kind of don't mind the PR hits they're taking, hopefully creating big changes, in their sports down the road.
Yeah,
blow it up. When it comes to the Players Association in baseball, I'm of two minds. On the financial side, I think that union has done more for its players than any other union. And you may not like the fact that they're the ones that get the, no salary cap, big money, but from a player's point of view, they've done that. Now, I think that they've been a union that's been certainly more geared toward the more veteran players, the players that have already, like it takes so long before you're able to get to that money. 6 years of major league service time before you become a free agent, 3 years before you even get to salary arbitration, which is pretty well rigged toward the owner's side. So to that degree, but once you get to that point, then that players association has done more for their players than anyone. But
Easily.
where I am anti that union is when it comes to owner proposals to fix the game, and most notably speed up the game. The players, the David Prices of the world and other ones, when they say, oh, pitch clock, go faster, fewer mound visits, they are wildly resistant to any and all of that. They have no interest in that because, or in addition to, they already have their money. So maybe that's part of the reason that they can stand back. Again, using David Price as an example, he's gotten his lifetime contract. That's it. When he gets to the end of that thing, there's no more money for him. So he's already got the contract that's going to pay him for life. So why would he care about a pitch clock? Why would he care about the health of the game? He's going to get his money one way or another. And I think that when it comes to talking about breaking the union, I am not interested. I am never going to be on the owner's side with anything because I don't think that they're necessarily interested in fixing the game that much either. I think they're interested in TV contracts and they're interested in that. But I don't know that anyone is particularly interested in fixing the game. So you're not going to get me on their side, but I do wish that the union would be more open to having the conversations about how they can fix the game in those ways, because I do think their bottom line is the money and they don't care much more. But I do think that and I'll just keep saying the phrase, I do think that maybe is the primary job of a players association or union, is the financials of it. They do have to have a vested interest in the health of the business, because if you're doing it long term, if you're looking at the player 10 or 20 years down the line and you want to preserve their earning power, but your sport is decreasing in popularity year over year over year, well, then you're not really doing the job for those players. You're doing the job for the ones that are in the sport now, but you're not taking care of the ones who aren't there yet. The thing that I have heard so much about since the Blake Snell comments and since other ones similar to that is that they're all a bunch of greedy guys, and we're all living in a pandemic and we've all taken a pay cut, and you're complaining about this, but what about the nurses and the firemen? And I would say and in fact I did say to someone on Twitter who put that out there, I'm like, that would be one thing if the $25 million that David Price gave back went to the firemen or the nurses or the teachers like Patrick. I'm sure he could do with a little bit of cash, but it doesn't. It stays in the pockets of the owners. And so when you talk about greed and you use the players as an example, you're ignoring that every dollar that player doesn't earn, all it does is stay in the pocket of a billionaire who, by the way, their career goes until they die. Like, the players still have a finite number of years that they get to earn money. The owners don't have that. So the owners can take 3 years off right now. They can say, we're going to blow this season off. We're going to blow next season off because we have the cash and we get to hang out forever. So there's greed on both sides, but people seem so willing to demonize the players for it while ignoring the greed of the owners.
Let me ask you this though: why don't the owners ever stand up to the player? Like, why not? Like, why do they seem to cave? Like, it is so the players have so much power in that league. It's because the owners have always acquiesced to the players, which is so different than what I'm used to. Obviously, it's the other way around. We always bend to the owners being the players in football, but in baseball, I'd like to see the owners actually have some balls and actually stand up to the players. And that's the only thing that's going to wake these guys up is actually standing up to them. So you say they obviously you would think they have enough resources and money to sit on their hands and, for a year or two and not play baseball, but will they actually do it? I want to see these guys actually do it, and as opposed to threatening it and not doing it and caving in at the last minute.
Teddy,
I just feel like, I'm sorry, go ahead, Patrick.
Thanks. Baseball is dying. You guys have teenagers. I teach teenagers. They don't care about baseball. I play trivia in my class every Friday. Who's the AL MVP? They don't know. Who won the Cy Young? They don't know. What Red Sox outfielder got traded to the Dodgers? They don't know. Baseball is dying. I think, and we put a lot of that, obviously the owners are complicit in it as well, but just the inflexibility of the players to speed up the game, to make it more attractive, to get, the length of a baseball game under 3 hours again. I think you're right. I think this may be the opportunity. And Ted, I hope that the owners do it. As you said, like, this is their chance to finally stand up to them, because whether on the players' part, whether it's just tunnel vision or ignorance or arrogance, it just seems like their game is dying and they're unwilling to budge and they're unwilling to change anything. So I think it is up to the owners to finally stand up to the players and start to make these changes, or else baseball is going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you always give into the players, and they have as much power as they have, it's not going to change their attitudes. I mean, they're going to continue. It's kind of like they're just going to say, that's, whatever the sport's dying. All right. That's the next generation's issue problems. It's not right now. Hey, I'm getting paid. There's all these regional TV contracts are huge. There's still tons of money to be made in baseball. So until that changes, these players are gonna be like, that's not my problem. That's the next generation's problem. And it's nothing I need to worry about. So until the owners actually stand up to them, the current attitude of these baseball players is never going to change.
We have just about 15 minutes left. After all of our technical problems, we actually very conveniently started right at 1:30. So it's now easy to do the math of when we're going to wrap up this sucker. Hockey and basketball, which one are you more excited to see come back? It looks like they're both coming back. It looks like these sports are going to finish their seasons.
All right, I'll go first here. I'm excited for basketball to come back. I'm more of an NBA fan than I am hockey fan. Although I'd love to see, let's face it, the Bruins, I never thought they would get off to the start that they got, considering what happened to them last year. So I want to see how the Bruins do. But as far as just kind of, I'm more of a fan of the NBA game, and I'm curious to see what the Celtics team can do with the kind of the young guys stepping up, some of the new pieces they've added. I'm more of an NBA fan. I just love to see the NBA get back and playing more than I would the NHL. But let's face it, I mean, the Bruins, playing how they did this season, considering how it ended for them last year, is a compelling story. So I guess both, but I'm more of a fan of the NBA. So I just can't wait for the NBA to get back and see how it all plays out.
And that works out because I'm really excited to get hockey back. I really liked the proposal that they came out with. I thought it was pretty good, given the circumstances and given what's going on with the pandemic. And as Teddy said, the Bruins have been a wagon really all year long, de facto President's Trophy winner if the President Trophy is going to be given out. So it's going to be really great. I mean, seeing hockey, playoff hockey in July and August, I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be fantastic. And, the Bruins came out of the gate hot to start the season. So hopefully they can come out of the gate hot again and go on another playoff run. They seem like they've been on a mission all year. After the way the Stanley Cup went last year, they could have, folded up their tent and gone home. But seems like they're on a mission this year, and hopefully they can pick up right where they left off, and we'll have some pretty exciting playoff hockey in Boston.
It's going to be, don't you guys, it's kind of like, it could be sensory overload for us. Now, you think about, let's face it, Marshall, like, we do radio, we've been doing radio for a long time. The summer months are tough. I mean, it's just very hard to find storylines that are compelling. It's just not as much to talk about. I mean, hockey, basketball, and then football starting. Yeah, who cares about baseball at this point? NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, with the start of an NFL season, all kind of like mixed together, dude, I think it could be potential of a really fun late summer, early fall sports kind of watching standpoint. It could be a lot of fun in the next couple months with all these leagues starting up with so much on the line right away.
And there's no, I mean, has there ever been a bigger test of momentum ever than what has it been? A 2.5 month layoff? Like the Bruins, I feel, they gotten over a couple blips in their season and they really seem to be, they made a couple, not huge trade acquisitions, but useful acquisitions. And they were headed into a postseason where they were primed to be in a pretty good spot. And so, like, I didn't have tremendous expectation for the Celtics. They seem to be kind of struggling to find their groove, doing well, but not being, I think, perhaps what we thought they would be this year. Whereas the Bruins had been, in my mind, overachieving all year long. So I'm more nervous for them. Like, I feel they are more primed to be a huge disappointment, because had the season never ended, I'm not saying they were going to in any way guarantee Stanley Cup appearance or championship or any of that, but there is every chance that they come back after this enormous layoff and have none of the mojo they had going into it, just none of it. And how massively disappointing. You're talking about an overload of things to watch. Imagine how disappointing that would be if now we're sit back and we're like, great, we get the Bruins back, we get the Celtics back, and then they both suck. Like the Bruins come out and are flat as could be, and what the goaltending's no good, or other teams that were flat going into the break are now have gotten something back together. It could be as just a tremendous sucker punch of for a fandom. Like, yay, they're back! Oh my God, they're no good, and they lost.
Let me ask you guys. Are you guys gonna be disappointed, or are you gonna make excuses for the Bruins? Like, if the Bruins go out there and lay an egg, are you gonna be like, oh well, I mean, it's no surprise. I mean, 2.5, 3 month more. It'll be more than a 3 month layoff, and not surprising that they came out and they were a different team. When you started after a 3 month layoff, are you gonna be pissed? Are you gonna hold them to a higher standard based on how they finished the season? I think at this point, it's like everybody's kind of starting from the same place. So I'm gonna hold them to the same high expectations as the expectations I had as them going into the coronavirus, as they are coming out. I'm going to hold them to a high standard because everybody, to me, is starting in the same spot. So I know it's unnatural to have a 3 or 4 month stoppage of play and then starting up with so much on the line. But everyone else is starting at the same point. The one thing I will say is that there's maybe teams that had star players, and I can't think of them off the top of my head, that were injured. That now they can come back and play for those teams. So maybe you can look at it and say it's not fair that way. But I think my overall point is I'm going to hold them to a high standard once they come out of this thing. And if they go fall flat on their face, I think it's going to be a disappointing season for the Bruins.
Yeah, I don't think they have any excuse. I mean, they have a lot of veteran leadership on that team between Chara, Bergeron, Rask, so on and so forth. So they should be able to use that experience. And I think they're really better equipped to come back from this, adverse situation and this layoff. I mean, they'll have no excuse, and they should be ready to go because of that leadership. And Ted, I know you just mentioned, it is a little bit of a hit. Like the Lightning are going to get back Stamkos for the playoffs, and they may not have necessarily had him before, just using him as an example. But still, the Bruins have led wire to wire. They have a veteran locker room. I'm not going to let them off the hook whatsoever. Pick up where you left off. You're seasoned veterans, and see if you can get it rolling again.
And if they can do it, you guys, it'll be one of the more impressive things I've seen a team do around here for a long time. Well, Ted, you played for the Patriots, yeah, but that was a demoralizing loss. To lose the Stanley Cup in your arena in Game 7 last year, and to come back and play like they did with that hanging over their head is so damn impressive to me. It would be a great story if they can win the whole damn thing. I don't think it'd be one of the more impressive things I've seen a team bounce back from in a long time.
It is actually, you make an excellent point there, because there were a lot of people who talked about the Bruins coming back this season and suffering from how rough it was last year to get that far and then lose in your own house the way that they did. I don't know that I will make excuses for them if they lay an egg, but I will definitely see it as kind of a lost opportunity, because I think we could all agree that they were not likely, or they certainly didn't look poised to lay an egg headed into the original playoffs. And so if they're a team that comes out of this and they're not the team that they were going into it, then again, I don't know that that's an excuse as much as I'll look at it and go, boy, oh boy, what it could have been had this not happened. A question from the comments, age could have something to do it. Ted, as a pro athlete, try to envision what it was, coming back from a layoff as a young player versus an old player. One assumes that young players would bounce back easier. So the Bruins with a more veteran roster may not be as primed to just bounce right back into playing.
Yeah, that's it. It's going to be that's so true. I mean, guys that were taking care of themselves, guys, I think the older guys, the more experienced guys, they know that they can't just sit around and not have any activity. They're probably finding real creative ways to keep themselves in really good shape. So, but that's a good point. The older guys, you could almost look at it as a negative with this layoff, because if they're not moving and their bodies obviously aren't there, the younger bodies, and it's going to be hard for them to kind of bounce back. That could be a factor, but they're also wise enough, smart enough to know that they better have been keeping themselves in good shape and finding creative ways to do that, regardless of all the restrictions that have been placed on them. So it can work both ways there. I have a question. Can I ask a question before we get off?
Absolutely.
For Patrick, I'm just curious because I have young kids in high school. I mentioned that earlier. Have you, as a seventh grade teacher, do you have any insight into what they're planning to have as far as next year, class schedules, and that kind of thing? Have you heard anything that might be beneficial for parents listening? Like what the plan is for school to start next fall, what that might look like, or is it still up in the air?
Sure. I mean, it's still up in the air. I think, all the various school districts are kind of putting together, plan A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then once the schools get the guidelines from the state and the State Department of Education of, what they expect school to look like in the fall, I think that's where we're going to start to see, kind of everything fall into place and, everything to be put into motion. I'm hoping to go back. I'm praying to go back to school.
Yeah.
Obviously it seems like we're not going back to school, with 100% capacity. Whether the state guidelines that you can only have 25% of the student body in at a time, or 50% of the student body in at a time. And I think it's going to be at that point, schools can kind of plan for there. If you have half the student body at a time, you can have half the kids go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the other kids go Tuesday, Thursday, and then switch the next week.
Yeah. I've been hearing the same thing, Patrick, and that makes me a little bit nervous, just because I'm a big fan of my kids playing sports. And so I feel like with that scenario that you just described, I'm hearing the exact same thing. Yeah. I feel like fall sports is in jeopardy. I just can't imagine you just can't play them with those kind of restrictions. So that makes me nervous. I hope that's not the case, but I'm worried for kids having fall sports this fall.
Yeah. And that's really my biggest worry as well. I love teaching, but I'm also the high school cross country coach. And, the thought of not having a fall season and then thinking about those seniors who will never get their fall season, it's definitely, troubling for sure. So I don't have any good news on that front. I'm hopeful that even if, only 25 to 50% of the student body goes back to school, maybe there'll be an exception for practice. Maybe the MIA will put something together that, even though schools are only at half capacity in the classroom, that will still be able to, play sports and have full teams in the fall. Just crossing my fingers.
Fingers crossed, brother.
All right. Well, that just about wraps it up for us. Before we go, Patrick, any questions for anybody? Any comments? Any parting thoughts?
No, just thank you guys for the opportunity. It's always kind of been a bucket list thing of mine to, if I wasn't entertaining 12-year-olds all day, I would love to talk sports for a living. So this was a nice little way to, cross it off my bucket list. So thank you guys for the opportunity.
Hey, Patrick, we enjoyed it, man. And teaching, it's very similar to radio, man. It's just informing and entertaining, man. It's the same kind of concept, buddy. So you did great, man. It was nice to meet you, and good luck to you.
Thanks. That's what I said in my email to Marshall. If I can entertain 12-year-olds all day, I should be able to talk sports for an hour. So thank you, guys.
You got it,
All
buddy.
right, guys, we will be back next weekend, and Ted, by that point, will have figured out how to update the Zoom on his computer. I will have sussed out the different email addresses I have for different accounts. Everything will go much smoother. So again, it's the Weekenders on YouTube. You can subscribe. You can watch for us on Twitter. Patrick, your Twitter account is something, I'm sure. People can find you where?
At PMMAHONE. Not the most user-friendly Twitter handle, but there you go.
Well, you can find my Twitter account at Marshall Hook, and then you'll find Patrick's sitting there. So thanks, everyone, for checking in with us, and let's do it again sometime.
Sounds good. See you, boys.
Thanks, guys.
All right.